So the Huawei P40 Pro. This phone packs everything you'd expect in a flagship from 2020, apart from one thing. And does that one thing really stop us from recommending it? Well, this video review is just for that. This phone is one of the more compact feeling flagships of 2020, and even at 8.95mm thick and 209 grams, it doesn't really feel that way at all. It's solid in the hand, comes with full IP68 water and dust resistance, and has a gorgeous matte silver frost color finish. Of course, Huawei carries over most of its hardware features to the flagship, meaning no speaker for calls as it uses the vibration of the phone's display to do that, as well as things like the IR blaster, microphones, volume rocker, and the power button. We've got the variant with 256GB of UFS 3.0 onboard storage, but there's room to expand this via Huawei's nano memory, which can be a bit tricky than the more traditional microSD expansion. We'll get into the Type-C USB port and the loudspeaker in a bit, but let's dive a bit deeper into the display. It's a Full HD Plus panel in essence, this time with curves on all four sides. This does make for a nice look, but to people who don't really like curved displays, this may be annoying. The OLED panel also supports things like HDR10, which is great for content consumption, and up to a 90Hz refresh rate. Having used panels from other flagships, this one does feel a bit lackluster for certain content nowadays. Colors aren't as vibrant as competing Quad HD Plus panels, and perhaps this is due to the phone's lack of HDR10 Plus support. But nonetheless, we think it's time Huawei moves back to Quad HD Plus like it did with the Huawei Mate 20 Pro series. As for the refresh rate, once again, we can't call it the best. It's smoother than your typical 60Hz panel you might find on other phones, but if you're familiar with any 120Hz panel from the likes of the Oppo Find X2 Pro, the OnePlus 8 Pro, or even the Samsung Galaxy lineup from this year, Huawei's looks a bit outdated. And addressing the display, we can touch on the speaker setup too. With Huawei's implementation without the earpiece, as we mentioned earlier, audio is not stereo. This is something we talked about last year with our P30 Pro review too, and we'd like it to be addressed. Given that the phone is a flagship, missing out on a feature like stereo speakers is a big deal, although if you often rely on wireless headphones or wired Type-C ones, it shouldn't matter too much. For what the P40 Pro misses out on in display though, it makes back with other hardware. For one, it comes with the latest Kirin 995G chipset, meaning you've got a good deal of future-proofing going for you as well. But alongside, you also get 8GB of RAM and of course the faster storage I mentioned. One thing though that Huawei does incredibly well is optimization of software. In this case, we've got an AOSP build of Android 10 underneath EMUI 10.1. The experience is nice and not too convoluted with AppGallery, Huawei's application store, also stocking up a variety of applications as the days pass. You can use the phone's app finder to find applications that aren't on the AppGallery yet, but yes, the obvious drawback is the lack of Google Play services out of the box. This might be a buzzkill for a lot of people, especially those expecting everything out of the box given the price of the smartphone, but we've done a dedicated video on how you can get those services up and running on the P40 Pro, so make sure you check it out. It's a long but relatively simple process, but can get this phone's functionality to almost 90% of what you get with a typical GMS running phone out of the box. Certain applications like Google Pay and others may not work, and that's something that will vary with usage, but it's important to keep that in mind if you're buying the P40 Pro or planning to do so. Essentially, this is a caveat, and for those that may not be particularly tech savvy, it may turn into a bigger problem in the future. That being said, the camera on this thing is splendid. It focuses a lot on AI photography and comes with a quad camera setup powered by Leica, a 50MP primary sensor, a 40MP ultra-wide lens, a 12MP periscope lens, and a 3D TOF sensor makes up the array. And right off the bat, the results show. The phone's zoom range, even at 10 times, is incredible, and having the largest camera sensor on a phone means nighttime performance is unrivaled. There's also an AI feature that allows you to get rid of reflections or unwanted subjects post capturing the photo, which is a huge help. On the front, you find a 32MP selfie camera and a 3D TOF sensor, and while good for selfies, the experience does fall a bit short when it comes to consistently nailing dynamic range. There's also a good deal of focus with the P40 Pro's Video Cine camera setup here, and with 4K 60fps samples, this shows. However, during nighttime, it still results in a stark quality drop. Now, housed in the device is a 4200 mAh cell, which is anything but disappointing. It gets you through heavy days of use, but even handier is Huawei's 40-watt supercharging. This gets you from 0% to 70% in just 30 minutes of charging, which is not the fastest out there, but certainly enough. And for anyone accustomed to wireless charging or reverse wireless charging, the phone's got that too. But there's a sense of apprehension when it comes to recommending the Huawei P40 Pro. We think the display is something that Huawei can perfect with future generations, and of course, the software support is beyond Huawei's control if you're looking at GMS support. Perhaps in a few months' time, as AppGallery matures further, the software limitations will not be too much of an issue, but all of that is in a bit of a blur at the moment, and that's really the killer blow considering much of the phone's other hardware is really good. The conclusion to this one though is similar to the underlying message in the video. If you can get to grips with certain software not working and are fine with a few more steps to get your favorite applications, the P40 Pro is a great choice. But for those who cannot, it's a phone that you should steer away from, as compelling as its other hardware features are. So that's it for this one. Let us know what you think down in the comments below and make sure to like and subscribe. This was Vaibhav and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.